Shifting from right to left. Play action to that side. Rolling right, looking. Fires in the end zone. Gonna be caught. Touchdown. That's a tight end from 15 yards out.
Welcome to the Bowl Season Stories Podcast, Season 3, Episode 1. I'm Nick Carparelli, the Executive Director of Bowl Season, and today we are joined by the National Coordinator of College Football Officials, Steve Shaw. And later on in the show, we will visit with University of Nebraska head football coach Matt Rhule. If you missed any of our previous episodes, you can catch them on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. And if you like today's show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating. And as always, you can follow all the bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media at Bowl Season. Our first guest was named the National Coordinator of College Football Officials in March of 2020. Prior to that, he served as the Coordinator of Football Officials for the SEC since 2011. He also coordinated the Sun Belt Conference. He's officiated in 14 bowl games during his career. Please welcome to the show, Steve Shaw. Steve, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Nick. It's always a pleasure.
I know you've held a lot of important roles in the officiating world throughout your career, but none more important than the one you occupy now. Can you give our listeners an overview on what it means to be the National Coordinator of College Football Officials?
Well, it's a daunting title, and but really our main goal behind it. And if you look at our officials, if you look on their left shoulder, it has CFO, and that's for College Football Officiating, and it's an LLC. The commissioners are our board of managers, and the original goal was to get, our football game is such a national game, get all our conferences together in terms of rule interpretations, in terms of mechanics on the field, and officiating philosophies, what we call officiating standard now. And it's such a national game, the players, the coaches, the fans deserve, one approach from officiating. And so that's our goal, one CFO. So the West Coast doesn't do it different than the East Coast and that sort of thing. So that's a big challenge. But then also I work with our coordinators. Each conference has a coordinator of officials, not only to drive this one CFO, but really recruiting strategies, rules development. That's another big part of my job. I'm the Secretary of Rules Editor. And so rules development and player health and safety. So it all kind of wraps up together. Many times just becoming the national spokesperson for officiating. And nobody wants to hear from officiating until something bad happens. But that's really the net of the role.
Well, obviously you love college football. You've made a career out of protecting it. What is your take on bowl season and its importance to the thousands of student athletes who compete and the millions of fans who are invested in watching the games?
Well, let me first say, in people don't think of it, but the officials have a role in this as well. But I think for the teams, being able to have a goal and a vision is so important. And teams are in such different places. Some teams just want to make a bowl, and then some teams want to make a New Year's Six bowl, and some teams want to go to the playoff and all of that. So it creates this environment that puts a goal out there, puts a standard for them, and really same for our officiating community as well. As an official, you want to perform well enough to make a bowl. And then once you're going to get into that group, you want the best bowl available. So I think that's great. But I think for fans too, you think of that December, early January window. Bowl season dominates TV, and it's really what people talk about. So it's the culmination of our season, and it means so much. And the history and the traditions in our bowls, you mentioned I've worked at a lot of different bowls, and each have their own set of traditions and things that they do. And it's just a great way to kind of cap off a great college football season.
Well, you've been a part of some big bowl games over the years. You officiated in 14 of them, as I mentioned earlier. Do you have a most memorable moment or a call from a bowl game that you've been a part of that really sticks out in your mind?
Well, you do. So first of all, let me say, very lucky that in those games, there's not a memorable moment from a negative perspective. Not that we were perfect, but we didn't have any major things that impacted games. But you go back at I got to work 2 national championship games, the 2000 Sugar Bowl and the 2005 Orange Bowl. Very memorable games. That Orange Bowl was Florida State, Virginia Tech when Michael Vick was there, an incredible game. People forget, Florida State won, but Virginia Tech came back in the fourth quarter, took their lead. Michael Vick, this was kind of his coming out party. He played an incredible game. So, a lot of great memories from that. The other national championship game, USC with Bush and Leinart, that whole group, what a great team playing Oklahoma. We had two Heisman Trophy winners in the game. So a lot of memories there. All of the games have special memories. I think so. As a referee, the white hat, the crew chief, I always think back to the toss. The bowls do so much around the toss, and over the years, all the celebrity tossers, from Jerry Rice, John Goodman, Shaq, Paula Dean, Cloris Leachman, the San Francisco Dons, the football team. I mean, pretty amazing stuff. But one that's kind of a special memory, my first Rose Bowl game. So you're always, not uptight, but you're excited, ready to go. The blood's pumping. And so Mr. Rogers was our celebrity tosser. They take whoever's the grand marshal, does the toss. And so we had a practice session the day before. And so Kevin Ash with the Rose Bowl, many people know him. He came up to me and he said, well, Mr. Rogers not going to make it today. He's resting up for the toss for tomorrow. And I thought, probably doesn't need to rest up that much, but we went on. So, but I said, hey, I'd like to meet with him a few minutes before, we go out just to make sure we've got all things in order. And he said, we'll take care of it. So we did. And so we're on the sideline, 6-7 minutes before kickoff. And so I asked Mr. Rogers, I said, have you ever tossed a coin? And he said, no. And I said, well, let's practice real quick. And so I handed him the coin. They have this commemorative coin. And so he took it, and then it just kind of boom, dropped straight off. And I said, okay, Mr. Rogers, we got to get a little air under this thing. So we practiced on that, got it kind of where we could live with it. So now, they have all the pageantry, the national anthem, the big stealth bomber flies over. I mean, it's incredible. And we're standing there. We've got the captains, myself and Mr. Rogers, game face on, ready to go out. And my side judge, Bobby IA, right before we go out, he walks over in front. He said, Mr. Rogers, he pulls out his game card. He says, Mr. Rogers, can I get your autograph? And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. We're getting ready to kick off. And then Mr. Rogers, so gracious. Yeah. What's your name, Sonny? And, so it's all the circumstances around the game that you remember so much, and having your family there is so important as well. So, but honestly, the memories in my on-field career with bowl season is endless. And it's so much fun to kind of go back and revisit those.
Steve, your YouTube shorts on the NCAA resources page have been become very popular, taking football fans week by week through controversial calls. It gives you the opportunity to further explain the rules of the sport. How important is that for you to educate people on the rules of the game throughout the season?
Well, it's so important. We started that originally directed at the TV talent, to help them understand the rules. And our words are inform and educate. It's not necessarily just designed to take those, controversial calls and say correct call or incorrect call, but it's really to understand the rules, how the officials approach it, what the philosophies and the principles are. And so that's what we try to do each week. And it's been amazing. The viewership on that has grown. And that's when the NCAA put it out there on YouTube, it kind of grew. We do a kind of an internal training tape each week for the officials, and that's where I use officiating jargon. We really direct it more toward the public, and the goal, like I said, is inform and educate, not really, weigh in, is this a good call or an incorrect call? And we got great feedback, and for your fans out there is a way to give feedback. So if you watch them and you have, hey, I'd like to see a play of, this type, we get those requests, and we'll try to find one of those to put out there just from a rules perspective or how officials work that. But it's something that we will continue this year.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the internal training tape. I know there are a lot of unknowns in the world of officiating to the average fan. That's probably one of them. Is there a process, and I know there is, a process in place to determine how officials are selected, how they're trained, how they're evaluated? How are officials held accountable for their performance on the field?
Yeah, that's a question, Nick, we get a lot. And I want fans to know there is high accountability with our officiating. Now, it's not always public accountability. Many times, like a coach will discipline a player and they'll do it, internally. We really try to do as much of that internally as we can. But, there are, you lose games if you don't perform, ultimately, if you don't perform, you're not going to come back. And so there is high accountability. And, the officiating crew is really a team. We always say they're the third team on the field. Every game they're evaluated. I mean, not just on their calls, they're evaluated on every play, their movement, their mechanics, their judgment, all of that kind of goes in together. And just like the players get a film grade on every play, so do our officials. And that combined together for the year really determines your postseason eligibility and, where you stack up in that ranking. And so as the national coordinator, I'll assign our bowl games out to our conference coordinators. And then, typically if they get assigned a New Year's Six game and that's their top game, then they'll take their number ones in every position. So, people call them all-star crews, but, we're familiar with each other. That works very well. And so that as an official, you're working very hard all season, on your evaluations, first to get invited back the following season, but then second, a drive for postseason eligibility. And then, just like the teams, now we're eligible for the postseason. Let's get as high a bowl game as we possibly
I want to let's talk about that a little more, Steve. We all know that teams that have successful seasons are rewarded by being selected to participate in bowl games. And as you just mentioned, similarly, the best officials at the end of the year are selected to officiate those games. Tell us a little bit more. How does that process work? And how do you go about assigning crews to the various bowls?
Yeah. So the first thing we do is avoid any conflict. So if you're a Big Ten official, and people may not know this, but we have partnerships in officiating. So like the MAC and the Big Ten are part of the same program. So if you're a Big Ten official, you could never work a Big Ten team or a MAC team in a bowl game. And so the first is you can't have any conflict from the assignment perspective. And so what really happens is each coordinator of each conference will rate all of their officials, from top to bottom. And then based on their bowl assignments, which come from the national coordinator, we'll organize their groups. And sometimes, you may have a number one referee and a number two umpire, but they work well together. So sometimes there's, a working relationship that you want to keep together. So you may have a 1 and a 2 working together, but at the end of the day, we're focused on putting our absolute best officials in the bowl games. And, you don't want to say elite, but as you work up the line, when you get to the New Year's Six, that's an elite group of officials that performed well during that season. And not only are they being recognized for their performance, but then, it's just like the team, they get the honor of going there. And the bowls themselves, I mean, they do a great job of entertaining and making it a great experience for the players and coaches. But people don't know, but they usually have a subgroup, and that's their role is, to make it a great experience for the officials, everything from picking them up at the airport to dinners and activities and that sort of thing. So make no mistake, it's business when we go there, but it's an opportunity, and the bowls do such a great job of allowing. And I will say this, and I mentioned it earlier, but think about the families of an official. I mean, during the season, that official's gone. People think, well, 12 weekends, they're gone. No way. They've got camps and clinics and scrimmages. So there's a family investment into an official. And many times the official will take their entire family to a bowl game. It's kind of reward for the whole family, especially the spouse for holding it all together while the official was gone. So a great process, but I can tell you, as an official, there's great pride. And I even compliment you. Many people don't know this, but a lot of people know that y'all send shirts to the teams when they become bowl eligible, and they can all cheer and put on their bowl season shirt. We did that last year for the officials. That was a great hit. I mean, that's a prized possession for that official. Now they've got their bowl season shirt as a reward for what they've done during the season.
Well, just like the best teams are bowl bound at the end of the year, the best officials are bowl bound as well. So it's all part of that process. A couple more questions, Steve. I want to focus on the rules a little bit. One of the largest hot button topics in football right now is the targeting call. Tell our listeners what constitutes a targeting call and what was the purpose of instituting that rule.
Yeah, so I know, and a lot of fans, because targeting carries a disqualification, that's really what propelled it to, front and center. But, if you step back, the targeting rule is a player safety rule. And quite frankly, we had to change player behavior, or we were at risk of losing our game. I don't want to sound overly dramatic, but we had to make some changes. And the targeting rule with the disqualification, and disqualification is harsh, but the most important commodity to a player is playing time. And when they lose playing time, that gets their attention. So the disqualification part really captures the attention of the players. And the expectation of the rule is to change how players use their head helmet in blocking, tackling across the board. And so basically what we have, there are two types of targeting. One is, and one that most people are familiar with, is targeting a defenseless player, whether it's the quarterback throwing a pass or a receiver over the middle or a blindside block. But so if you target a defenseless player, there are three things we look for. Is that player defenseless? And so that's the first thing. The second is, is there an indicator of targeting by the player? Is there a launch, lowering of the head, leading with the head? So there has to be an indicator of targeting. And then finally, forcible contact to the head or neck area of that defenseless player. And if all three of those are there, and replay actually now looks at it, and they have to confirm all aspects. So they have to confirm all three, or we overturn it. People know, in replay, you have confirm, stands, and overturn. Well, we don't have stands in targeting. You either confirm all aspects or overturn it. And the thought there is, we don't want these can't really tell, it's a stands. We don't want to disqualify a player on that. So we've done that, and that's been helpful to it. And then the other type of targeting is targeting with the crown of the helmet, and crown being the very top. And that's when a player, this is probably the most dangerous, when a player lowers their head and leads with their head and makes contact with the crown, forcible contact to an opponent. Doesn't have to be defenseless opponent, any opponent with the crown. Then that's a foul, and it carries the disqualification. But let me just say this, as much as people don't like it, really over the last 3 years, our targeting numbers are going down, which is a great statement for the game. Players now are better in the use of their helmet, and really it's saving our game, but most importantly is protecting the student athlete. So yeah, I know there's always consternation when your favorite player is disqualified, but remember, it's a player safety rule, and we're really trying to do it to change player behavior, and it's working.
The NCAA Football Rules Committee released 8 major adjustments to the rule book in January of this year. Those will be implemented heading into this season, just a couple weeks. Can you give us the highlights of those and what fans should look out for when they watch games this year?
Yeah, the biggest thing that we'll notice, we've got 3 changes in our kind of clock procedures, and those will be most noticeable. And the first is, and let me just say why those are there. People just have kind of said, well, that's because, they just want to shorten these games. They're getting too long. But it really is not that. The reasoning behind it was threefold, and driven a lot by our commissioners and our rules committee. First it was to keep the game moving, pace of the game. Fans want it to keep moving. Players do. The game runs better. So keep the game moving. The second was to modestly take out a few plays of the game. People may not know it. Last year in FBS, we averaged about 178 plays per game. Compare that to an NFL game last year, 151 plays. Nobody would have thought our college players playing that many more plays. So modestly reduce. We don't have a target number, but we want to modestly reduce the number of plays. And then finally, another area was consistency in officiating mechanics. And I'll talk about that a little bit. But the 3 changes that'll be noticeable, number one, and the biggest, is now on first downs, we're no longer going to stop the clock to award a first down, except for the last 2 minutes of each half. Now, I think that's a beautiful difference between the college and the NFL game. If you're late in the game and you don't have timeouts, you still have a chance, get a first down, the clock stops, you got a chance to get set. So we're keeping that part of it. But other than those last 2 minutes of each half, the clock's going to run, keep the game moving. The second change is now a coach or team can no longer call multiple timeouts in the same dead ball period. Really focused on, we've all been there. Defense has 3 timeouts left. We're into the second quarter. The other team's going to try a 35-yard field goal, and we call 3 timeouts to ice the kicker. And, you lose 5 minutes of your life that you never get back. So now they can call 1 timeout in any dead ball period, and that's it. And then finally, the third change is, when we have a accepted foul at the end of a quarter, we've always extended that. We bring back, we extend that quarter, run another play. Well, now we're only going to extend in the second and fourth quarter. In the first and third quarter, if there's a foul, we're still going to enforce it, but it'll be to the start of the next quarter, again, just to keep the game moving. So those are the 3 things from a clock perspective that, the fans will notice as we go through the season.
Well, that's great information, Steve. We really appreciate you joining us. You mentioned earlier, officials are like the third team on the field, but unlike the other 2 teams, people don't want to know you're there. They only know you're there when they get upset at you. But it's a tough job. You do an unbelievable job of preparing the officials across the country to do as good a job as they can possibly do. So we appreciate all you do for the game. Thanks again for being on the show, and good luck to you this season.
Well, Nick, it's my pleasure being on, and I'd be remiss if I didn't end my time thanking all of your bowl season teams. I mean, from the executive director all the way down, we appreciate what you do with our officiating community, and it means so much to those officials. And so a big thank you to all of your bowl season leadership.
Thanks, Steve. I'll pass that on. Our next guest is embarking on his first season as the head coach at Nebraska. The New York City native played linebacker for Penn State before starting his 25-year coaching career. This will be his 8th year as a college head coach overall, including 4 years at Temple and 3 years at Baylor. He returns to college football after a 3-year head coaching stint in the NFL. Please welcome to the show the head football coach for the Nebraska Cornhuskers, Matt Rhule. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Wow, it's good to see you, Nick. Thanks for having me on.
We know it's a busy time of year for you, getting ready for the season to kick off in just a couple weeks. Want to go back, start during your playing days at Penn State. You were part of some powerhouse football teams there. Undefeated 94 team, won the Big Ten, went on to defeat Oregon in the Rose Bowl in front of over 100,000 people. You defeated Auburn in the 96 Outback Bowl in Tampa. You defeated Texas in the Fiesta Bowl. What amazing experiences those must have been. Tell us about your time at Penn State, and specifically how meaningful and memorable those bowl games were for you and your teammates.
Well, I love Penn State. I love playing for Coach Paterno. Some of the players I played with are my best friends to this day. I don't think there's anything like college football. And as you said, I was a kid who walked on, just trying, I knew I wanted to coach, trying to find a way to get on the field. And lo and behold, my first year, we're in the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, and just an amazing experience. As you said, going down and playing the Outback Bowl in a pouring rain was just one of those kind of iconic moments. That Auburn team, I think they had Cadillac Williams and Ronnie Brown. I can't remember. They had some great players. I just remember them, but then I had a chance to play. I played in the last 2 bowl games. I played in the Fiesta Bowl against Texas. I played in the Citrus Bowl against Florida, and those are life moments for me, moments that I'll remember for the rest of my life, and not just playing in the game, but the travel, the experiences, the excursions, the time with your teammates, and really for me as a young player, trying to go from being a walk-on to getting on the field, that was a time for me to practice and play and get an opportunity to show what I could do, and I think I made some jumps in that time that allowed me to eventually get on the field.
Now, you have a very unique coaching road. You've coached, I don't know if you've thought about this, assistant or head coach in 5 different FBS conferences: MAC, Pac-12, American, Big 12, and now the Big 10.
I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah, well, conference realignment is a big thing right now, as we know. Given those experiences, do you have any particular thoughts on conference realignment and the impact that it's having on college football?
You know, I'm one of those people. I'm always hesitant to say something's bad until like you experience it, because sometimes things we think are bad are going to be great. That being said, I'm kind of a traditionalist. I love college football. Like, I'm one of those people who wakes up to watch Arizona State, and then wants to watch Washington State, then wants to watch Army Navy, then wants to watch. I mean, I love the iconic games. I miss the backyard brawl. So I miss some of those elite conference traditions. I miss some of even
the rivalry games.
The rivalry
games seem to have gone by the wayside a little bit.
No doubt, man. But I think that's part of the thing. As we talked, you and I have talked about bowl games. Like sometimes you have the opportunity to now with conference realignment to play some of those games, and I think there's so many memories. But I think it remains to be seen. Hopefully this new world order. I mean, I know at Nebraska we're lucky to be in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is changing. So I'll just kind of reserve my opinions and just see what happens. But I do miss some of the great college football traditions and rivalries and some of the things that made it great.
Yeah, that's a good answer. Now, you made some very interesting comments at the Big Ten Media Days on the culture of Nebraska football. Part that stuck out the most to me was you wanting your graduates, the players who go through your program, to say, my life is better because I went to Nebraska. You went on to talk about the culture of young people in general. I want to know your stance on building men who play football and not football players. What can you and the University of Nebraska do for the young men in your program?
Yeah, I think anybody that works for me knows that is our purpose. I always thought there's a mission and a purpose in everything you do. And our mission is, we want to build champions. We want to have a great football program. We want to hoist a trophy. But our purpose is far greater. And our purpose is to make sure that we do build men, and the best men that we can build, and young people that someday look back and say, you know what, they poured into me, and as a result, my life is better. And so I think you can absolutely do that. I think, now with NIL and some of the different things, there's a tendency to look at it as professionalization, but 18-year-olds are still 18-year-olds, 22-year-olds. In fact, if you talk to a lot of psychologists, an 18-year-old today is kind of like a 15-year-old was 10 years ago. And that's nothing negative about them. It's just society and, post-COVID and all the different things they've been through. Just, they need to come to college and have experiences. They need to have relationships. They need to build resilience through connections. And so I think our young people have never been more vulnerable. And, if you treat them just as football players, Nick, they'll probably do well at football, but they won't be as resilient. They won't be as vibrant as they could be if you treat them as people. And I think that's, even being in the NFL and seeing the amount of stress and anxiety those guys go through, you cannot take your identity from what you do. I can't, I'm not a football coach. I'm a man who coaches football, and I'm certainly a father first. And so I just think that message is one that's powerful. I think that's one that you can say, but you have to live by, has to guide every decision you make.
Well, typically a new head coach is a new head coach for a reason. Typically there's a little bit of rebuilding that needs to happen with the program. You're obviously no stranger to that. Let's go back a little bit to your first head coaching job at Temple. You were there for 4 years. Your records were 2-10, 6-6, 10-4, 10-2. In that final year, 2016, you won the only conference championship in school history. And I want to know, I've known you for a while, but I didn't know this till I looked it up. There's only been 3 10-win seasons in the 76-year history of Temple football. You had 2 of them back to back.
Interesting.
I'm giving you a lot of facts you didn't even know about yourself.
Feel good about myself right
now. Tell us how you were able to build that program the way you did.
Well, it was unique because I was there on the front end, right? So I was there with with Al Golden. I thought Al did a masterful job of getting that program from like the cellar to being really relevant and going to bowl games in the MAC. And then I was here with Steve Adazio, great coach who came in and brought an energy and a vibrance to the team, and got to a bowl game and won the first bowl game since 1979. So there was these different steps that I was a part of. Left and went to the NFL. Steve had a chance to go to Boston College. I came back. And really what it was we had a talented group of young people, but we had made the step from like the Mid-American Conference into the Big East, which then transitioned into the American. So For me, it was, hey, we were just young and not good enough yet. But the pieces were there. Steve left the pieces. And so, PJ Walker went on to become the all-time leading passer in school history, I believe. Hassan Reddick was a walk-on. Deion Dawkins starting left tackle for the there's all these NFL players, Tyler Matakevich, all these guys were there. They were just young. And I learned, Nick, that you could do your best coaching in the years where you're losing. So in that year when we went 2-10, and we didn't win our second game till the last game, so we were 1-10 at one point. I remember we were 1-9, and we were up 21-0 on UConn, and it was so cold. They had an interim coach in TJ Weist. It was so cold. Our guys came out and really didn't want to play the second half. They came back and beat us 28-21, and we went out that Monday in full pads, and we were like, "Hey, the standards of the program are we're going to play whether it's cold or not. If we're not going to play on Saturday, we'll play on Monday." And those guys emerged that week, and they went out and we beat Memphis 42 something. And so I learned, like, hey, you know what? You have to be patient with players. But you have to, at the same time, like, you have to do your best coaching in the times when you're losing. And so we got the next year, we got to 6-6, but didn't get to go to a bowl game. Then we got to 10 wins, but we lost the championship. Then we got to 10 wins and we won it. So I looked back on those 10-win seasons and was like, hey, our best job was the first year, where we kind of kept everyone, So then I walk into Baylor and I had to do the same thing all over again. But it was the lessons I learned at Temple, which guide me to this day. But I give a lot of credit to the coaches who came before me. They left those players there. They were young. We just had to grow them up.
Yeah, that's a good point, Coach. Every rebuilding challenge is different, right? Based on what you have that's left for you and what you have to work with. You mentioned Baylor, similar story there. 3 years, 1-11, 7-6, 11-3. You inherited a very different type of program there. There's a little bit of turmoil going on. You defeated Vanderbilt in the 2017 Texas Bowl, which, looking back, seemingly launched your program into the following season, which culminated in a berth in the Big 12 championship game, as well as the Sugar Bowl. What were those experiences like for you and your program? And maybe talk specifically about the role bowl games play in the development of a program and how they can set the stage for not just be a reward for the current season, but really launch a program into the following season.
Yeah, that 2018 season, especially after going 1-11, and we kind of went through the same process of, hey, 1-11 teams need good coaches too. And if you say that your purpose is to build men and help them have better lives, then you have to help them through 1-11. And so that 1-11 year, just, trying to build connections and relationships, help them through the toughest time of their lives. And I think the good thing was, Nick, a lot of those guys recognized then, like, hey, when we lose, the coaching staff doesn't turn on us. They're right there with us. So we got to the next year and we were 5-6. We go to play Texas Tech. They're 5-6. We're 5-6. Winner goes to a bowl game. And our guys went out and they played and they won. And we had a chance to go to the bowl game. And I remember a lot of things about the game. It was a back and forth game. But I'll just say the impact a bowl game can have on a university and a program first. For a university that had gone through the worst thing in its existence, right? That had gone through a scandal, that every fiber of what it stood for, was questioned. And it was almost embarrassing sometimes to wear your Baylor stuff, I think for alumni and fans, at least for some people, they shared that with me. I'll never forget, after the game, we bussed back to the hotel. We were spending the night there. It was in Houston. And walking into the hotel and lined with family, friends, but just Baylor people. And just the band was playing. Dr. Livingstone, our president, was there. And just the pride everyone felt to say, we had hit rock bottom, but we had risen. We had come back. And I think a bowl game can do that. That bowl game was earned. There was so much misery and there was so much heartache that went into that bowl game. But to your point, we also had a bunch of practices, man. We also had a bunch of experiences. And sometimes young people don't know what they can do until they see it. And they were able to go to that bowl game, see what a bowl game was like, see what it meant to be one of the best teams in the country, see what it meant like to play an SEC team. And we won the game. And I think that those extra practices, those experiences, I remember we lost the rodeo to Vanderbilt. And I brought the team in the next day and I absolutely got after them. And they were like, Coach, it's a rodeo. I'm like, we're from Texas. Like, we're not supposed to lose the rodeo. And the point being, like, hey, you're here to compete. Like, you're here to get better. You're here. I believe life is about excellence. And, like, you have these moments and you have to show excellence. And so whether it was the rodeo at the Texas Bowl or the game itself, our guys got to experience excellence a little bit more. And we hit the next year, man, running. And we won 10 straight or 9 straight until the end of that year. So we wouldn't have done what we did in 2019 had it not been for the Texas Bowl.
You talk about the experiences. I think as we get older, Coach, you tend to cherish experiences more. You look back the experiences you had and you appreciate them more. I think it's hard for 18 to 22-year-old kids to understand that when it's happening. You think about the experiences that bowl games provide for these kids. Is there anything that sticks out in your mind from all your bowl game experiences, either as a player, a coach, something that happened at a bowl game during bowl week or game day that you think about from time to time?
Yeah, I think probably several. I think one as a player, I don't even know if I should say this one, but we used to have a group of guys we'd run around with. We're playing in the Fiesta Bowl. We're down in Scottsdale, and you're playing the University of Texas, and we couldn't find our buddy Joe Juravicius. We're like, where's Joe? And so we walked into one, there's like a country music place, and there's the entire Texas football team, or at least all their old linemen, and there's Joe Juravicius sitting in the middle of them, and they're singing Boot Scoot Boogie. And I think I always remember that because, there's a brotherhood as members of the Penn State football team. There's obviously a different brotherhood as members of Texas, but there's also a shared brotherhood of being college football players. And guys sacrifice a lot and go through a lot. So to sit there with those guys and, sometimes we see fights on the field, we see bad, sportsmanship. But you know what? We were all there, that day, just kind of being brothers in football. And I always remember that and appreciate that. But I think for me, I think again, I'll always go back to winning that Texas Bowl game, right? Watching Charlie Brewer, my quarterback, who, he came to Baylor on faith when it was going through nothing, never even took an official visit, just enrolled mid-year, and seeing him up on stage wearing the Cowboy hat as the game MVP, seeing how his teammates all loved him so much, and they weren't like, why am I not the MVP? They were happy for him. I think those are the moments you remember, right? Obviously, the game's the game. You love to go back, but you go back and watch the game, just remember the experiences that you had and all the fun that you had. So I think those are the ones that stand out, at least until we get to one here.
Well, Coach, I couldn't have teed it up better. You led right into that transition. Nebraska ranks 9th all-time in bowl game appearances with 53, 9th all-time in bowl game victories with 24. Forgive me, Coach, but you have not appeared in a bowl game in any of the last 6 seasons. I almost feel like I have to say that again. Growing up, you turn on the TV in December, Nebraska's in a bowl game, right? I know you haven't even coached a game yet, but how important would it be for your program to win 6 games and play in a bowl game this year?
Well, I think it would be great for our players because these guys have stayed here and stood by the program. And I think, when you get here, you talk to the players. There's so many guys that are diehard Cornhuskers, and they want to be part of the group that got it back on track. So to play in the postseason obviously would be a step in that direction. I think it'd be great for our fan base. No one travels, no one cares like Big Red Nation, right? So I think they need that, and they would want that. But I was walking to a basketball game one day, Nick, and I was, I'm kind of just walking from my office down to the Pinnacle Bank Arena, and there's about 8 to 10 young guys, college age guys walking. They're like, Coach Rhule, what's up, man? I'm talking to them as we're walking. Can't remember who we're playing. And the one guy said, Coach, any bowl, please, we don't care what it is. Just get us to a bowl game. We're 4th-year seniors. A couple of us are 5th-year seniors, and we came back for one more year. We could have graduated and gone on with our lives. We came back for one more year. We want to go to the pep rally. We want to go play golf for a week. We want to go. And so just seeing what it means to the students, because when you're a student at the University of Nebraska or anywhere, and your team's playing good football, you're proud. And when your team goes and plays in a bowl game, you're proud. And then, when your team plays against a team from the SEC or ACC, or you get bragging rights. And so, I believe that college athletics truly are the front porch of the university. And when people see excellence from the football program, they recognize that there's excellence everywhere. And it's unfortunate maybe that's that way. That I'm a botany professor on campus doing amazing work, and people only know the football program, but that is society, and it is what it is. So if we can best represent excellence by playing in a bowl game and playing another conference, well, then we hope that we're representing everybody at the University of Nebraska. And then finally, man, we need the practices. I've got a young team. I need every practice I can get. I need them to go down to the bowl game, go out and have fun, go to an event, show up the next day, practice, go back to another event. I need them to get good at football. And so we're going to do everything we can to get there.
That's a great message, Coach. People forget there's 130 FBS institutions, only 12 spots in the new playoff coming up. Not everybody can be in it, but programs are at different stages in their development. Some are rising young programs, some are historic programs like yours that are trying to rebuild. You don't go from where you are now to a playoff overnight. You need those steps and those building blocks, and I think you outlined that pretty good. Last question for you, Coach. You spent the last 3 years coaching the NFL. Now you're back in college. What are the biggest differences between coaching in the NFL versus the college game?
Well, certainly for just the season is a lot longer. You coach 3 preseason games, 17 regular season games. It's a little bit of a grind, but football's football. Players and coaches are players and coaches. I just think you have an unbelievable opportunity here at the collegiate level to impact and alter people's lives. It's a very transactional environment in the National Football League, and as it should be, right? You have grown men in scouting, you have grown men in coaching, you have grown men playing for you. But here, I tell our coaches sometimes, in the NFL you coach, here we train. We're teaching guys how to play football. We're training them in the right way to play football. And then we're also helping them, learn how to impact the community, learn how to be a great teammate, learn how to be a great student, learn how to change their lives and have unbelievable opportunities because of the sacrifices they make. So we touch so many more aspects of their life in college than we were doing in the NFL. The NFL was great. I've had 2 stints there. Awesome opportunities. Awesome. Working for Tom Coughlin was amazing, right? Working with the players, working with Christian McCaffrey and Stephon Gilmore, JC. I'm so grateful for the guys I had a chance to coach, but there's so much purpose here at this level. And so you have a chance to do something that you feel like is greater than just football. I love football, but impacting people is also important.
Well, I, for one, I'm glad you're back. You and I have been friends for a while. I'm a fan of you personally and professionally. College football needs more guys like you, Matt, to be honest, and the game is lucky to have you back. So thanks for joining us, Coach, and good luck to the Cornhuskers this season.
Thank you, my friend.
Well, that'll do it for this week's podcast. If you missed any of our previous episodes, you can catch them on Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, or anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. If you liked today's show, we'd appreciate you dropping a 5-star rating. And as always, you could follow all the bowl season news on our website, bowlseason.com, and on social media @bowlseason. Thanks for listening.